Well, one, because we're a regional organization, we do capacity building on adult education, and this we do together with DVV. For example, we have a program on training for transformation. And in here, we develop the capacities of adult educator practitioners, not only in providing good quality programs, but for them to also be leaders in their own right as adult education advocates as well. And so every year we have the basic leadership course. This year we had one oriented towards the youth. So what we did is to gather the youth leaders who are working in adult education, and we asked them to build a youth voices in education agenda, and we talked about how youth leaders can be a vital force in pushing adult education programs in Asia Pacific. Very much, that is our focus, and in fact ASPBAE focus is securing the right to education of marginalized sectors. So what we do is to make sure that the marginalized perspective is in the education policy development. You know what? We work again with the coalitions. For example, the coalitions need evidence-based policy advocacy, and so what we do is to help them build the capacities for doing research and policy analysis. For example, in a community of indigenous people, how do we develop education policy around indigenous education? So we help our members do researches, how they do surveys, and eventually how they do policy analysis and how they can develop policies that are very much oriented towards the need of the marginalized sectors. There are a lot of discussions around the education post-2015. ASPBAE makes sure that civil society voices are heard in these regional processes. And what we do is we work closely with members who are operating in the countries. So now we're helping coalitions and members do their own education for all assessments, leading to an identification of their education post-2015 agenda in their own countries. And then what ASPBAE does is they put together all of this agenda into a regional policy recommendation, and then we use this in the different platforms. Yesterday we talked about the importance of integrating lifelong learning in the education post-2015. Why we said that, why we are focusing on lifelong learning is because we believe that adults and the youth, they have the right to education as well. Because when we talk about education, usually people talk about children, putting children into schools, you know. But in Asia Pacific, majority of those who are denied an education are the women. And as we know, there are 774 illiterate women globally. 65% of them are in Asia Pacific. And we also have a huge amount of out-of-school youth in Asia Pacific, and many of them are out of work. So that is the dilemma. We say that while it is important to focus on school-based interventions, it is also important to look at adult education and the education of those who are not in school and of the women. So that is why we want to integrate adult education in the post-2015 agenda. We're working not only in the Philippines, but also working with Indonesia on the education for sustainable development. And we think that there are two ways of looking at education for sustainable development. One, for example, is helping build resilient communities by adaptation, but also calling governments to account to the effects of climate change. So while we do capacity building, helping communities, helping countries develop capacities to prepare for disaster, we also think that their voices should be heard. For example, in the international agenda, now that we're developing the Sustainable Development Goals, the marginalized communities agenda should be integrated in that, and the effects of climate change should be brought into the agenda also, and how the countries can do mitigation efforts so that the countries don't suffer from the climate change. So we address education for sustainable development both at the policy level and at the adult education program level, awareness raising and building resilient communities.